I'm Renee Rzuski, registered licensed dietitian for cardiac rehab and pulmonary rehab. I hope you're all doing well today. I have another education for you today. We're going to be talking about a healthy gut, a healthy you. We'll be talking about why it's important to keep our gut healthy. We'll talk a little bit about the types of foods you can be eating to protect your gut health. And also we'll talk a little bit about prebiotics and probiotics as well. So we know there's a lot of mounting research revealing causal connections between gut imbalances and chronic disease of many types, not just when we think about maybe gut health, maybe you're thinking about stomach or digestive health issues, but really a lot of different chronic diseases. We know that imbalances in our gut flora, and we're talking about gut flora, we're really talking about the amounts of good bacteria, the amounts of bad bacteria, and how balanced those are. So when we know there's too much of the wrong type of bacteria, that's what contributes to making us sick. And we know that these imbalances have been implicated in virtually all of autoimmune conditions. For example, insulin-dependent diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and asthma are just a few of 100 or so autoimmune conditions we know about. We also are talking about other chronic health issues such as heart disease. So yes, that's connected to an imbalanced gut. Also talking about, of course, diabetes, type 2 diabetes or non-insulin requiring diabetes, as well as fatty liver and problems with our weight, so being overweight and obese. So the invisible enemy when it comes to almost every disease process is inflammation. It's not something you feel, it's not something you see. And where in the body is ground zero for widespread inflammation? It is actually your gut. So that's why it's important to focus on keeping our gut healthy. So here we know Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, wisely observed all diseases begin in the gut. Today we're catching up in our understanding of why the gut plays such a central role in both health and disease. The cumulative effects of our diet, frequent use of antibiotics, and even oversanitation may be the biggest contributors to the steep increase of these conditions affecting us today. So what is the gut microbiome? Our gut, when we're talking about our body, is really our entire digestive system. But when we're talking about our gut in terms of health and disease, we're really focusing on our small and large intestine. Your large intestine is also called your colon. And it is here in the colon where the majority of these bacteria reside. And of course, we know we carry bacteria on our skin as well. So the colon really is the home for the majority of them. And as you can see here, we are made up of nearly 100 trillion organisms, including all types of different bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microbes. What's really interesting, what we have learned, is our bacteria outnumber by 10 times the number of cells that make up your entire body. So we are actually more bacteria than we are human. And another interesting note is we all have our own unique microbial footprint that starts in utero and develops over our lifetime. And it's impacted by our diet, our lifestyle choices. Do we drink alcohol? Do we smoke? What kind of medications we take? So all of those things go into our unique microbial footprint, just like we all have our own unique fingerprints as well. So what do our microbes do? They have a lot of jobs, and not all of them are actually listed on here, but these are some of the important ones to focus on as far as our topic here today. Without microbes, we wouldn't really be able to digest our food well. So we're talking about they make certain types of digestive enzymes to help break down the proteins and carbohydrates and fats in our foods so our body can absorb and receive those nutrients. They're also involved in making vitamins like B12 and other B vitamins, also involved with producing fat-soluble vitamins such as vitamin K, vitamin D, and vitamin E. What's really important to notice here is these microbes, of course, regulate our immune system. So that's why it's really important to make sure we have the right balance of these good and versus bad bacteria. And I'm not sure if you know this or not, but over 70% of our immune system actually shares space with our microbes and resides in our large colon along with what we call the gut microbiome. So I know these are a lot of big words, but really it's that large colon or large intestine, or otherwise known as your colon, where we're kind of looking at where the majority of these bacteria live, but also the majority of our immune system. Here is where we talk about how our gut health, our gut balance of these bacteria actually have a link to our weight. So we know that they are involved with regulating our metabolism, so how your body uses the energy you consume. And we know that if we have too many of the wrong types of bacteria, we call them fat-loving bacteria, that it makes it harder for people to lose weight. We know our microbes are involved with communicating with our brain. They discovered what we call the gut-brain axis. So it's a two-way highway. You can think of it that way. That's our gut to our brain to the gut, where these microbes actually have a lot of influence over everything from our moods and our implications here in mental health, like depression, but also they influence what you eat. They even have influence over cravings. So I know a lot of my patients talk to me about, I don't feel like I have any self-control. I always have cravings. Well, it's not really your self-control that has the full blame here. It's really the makeup of the different types of bacteria you have in your body. So again, the more fat-loving or the unhealthy or the bad bacteria you have, the more likely it is you struggle with your appetite and cravings. So you can see here some of the diseases that we know are linked to an unhealthy gut. And again, these aren't all of them, but these are relevant to what we see mostly in cardiac and pulmonary rehab. So here we're looking at obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is a cluster of different types of health problems. For example, we talk about having high levels of triglycerides, low levels of HDL, which is your good cholesterol, to having impaired fasting blood sugars, and also having a BMI that indicates you're overweight, or even a BMI indicating you're obese. So most scientists and physicians are now in agreement. We can maintain and improve the health of our gut microbiome through diet, exercise, and lifestyle modifications, just as Hippocrates identified all those hundreds of years ago. So what we learned is that our diet has the biggest impact on our gut health, and that's encouraging because we can control what we eat. We decide what we buy at the store. We decide what we put in our mouth. So the good news is that we can change the balance of these bacteria within 3 days. So it's never too late and to be able to improve our health. And of course, how we feed ourselves really is one of the most important responsibilities that we do have. And doing it in an intentional way can mean the difference between sickness and health today and even in the future. So let's talk about prebiotics and probiotics. You may be more familiar with probiotics. You've probably heard of those. You've probably seen commercials selling probiotic supplements on TV or maybe through magazines that you read. And probiotics are are living bacteria that are good, that provide health benefits to humans. And just like anything living, it requires food and water to keep it alive. There's certain types of foods or nutrients that these living bacteria or probiotics need in order to grow in number so that we can displace all the wrong bacteria. So now we're going to talk about prebiotics. Prebiotics are actually the food sources to these living bacteria. They're not digestible by humans. So when we talk about some of the foods on the next slide, they are different types of sugars, and don't get worried about the word sugar. This isn't something that elevates blood sugars. It's a sugar that's fermented in our intestines. So after we digest these foods and we absorb their nutrients, these sugars are not digested, but their benefit is that they ferment in our gut. So when we talk about fermenting, fermenting means basically that they're producing different types of fuel sources for these good bacteria to gobble up and proliferate. So that's important, and we're going to talk about how much of these types of pre and probiotic foods we need to consume so we can displace the wrong types of bacteria. Now, if you're wondering, well, what feeds the bad bacteria? It's the standard American diet. And mostly what we're talking about here that has the biggest impact on the growth of bad bacteria is sugar, added sugars. And of course, we know in the United States, Americans are getting about 70 pounds of sugar per person per year. So sugar is going to encourage the growth of yeast, different types of fungus, as well as other types of bacteria that can, remember, influence those bad bacteria's effects on your moods, to your cravings, your appetite, and making it difficult for you to lose the weight. And it's really important to notice here too that pre and probiotics work together. So we talked about the synergy between these two. So let's say, you add a prebiotic food source like blueberries into yogurt. And I'm talking about real blueberries, not the fake stuff you buy in yogurt called blueberry yogurt. But when we put that together, you get a lot more energy and synergy with those two there to help really promote that proper digestion, but also to encourage the growth of good bacteria. So what's the nutrition prescription? It's to really supplement your diet daily with these pre and probiotic foods. So to start out simply, I recommend anywhere from 1 to 3 servings of prebiotic foods daily. And same thing here with probiotics, 1 to 3 servings probiotic foods every day. And if you're not used to these types of foods, it is wise to start on the lower range of the recommended serving size so it gives your gut a chance to get used to these. Some of the temporary side effects can be a little bloating, a little gas, a little, those types of things, but they go away pretty quickly. But that's just, again, kind of a sign to show you are, trying to build up more good bacteria because you had too many of the wrong bacteria present. So I bet these are foods that everyone's familiar with. You probably eat a lot of these on a day-to-day basis, but you just didn't really know that they were food sources that actually were good for your gut health. So I want to kind of just talk about bananas because I know that a lot of people who have maybe blood sugar issues have heard controversial things about bananas, such as they can really increase your blood sugars or they'll make you gain weight because of their sugar content. That's all wrong. So I want to just kind of make a note here about bananas. It is true, the riper your banana gets, the more sugar it develops because it's ripening. It makes sense. It makes the banana more sweet, right? However, what's really interesting about bananas, because it's a prebiotic food, that's an indigestible type of fiber in there, or an indigestible type of sugar we call galacto-oligosaccharides, or GOS for short. And this means two things: that the banana actually is digested more slowly. It's resistant to digestion, so you have a slower blood sugar raising effect with it versus if you're eating grapes or watermelon and things like that. And then the GOS sugar, galacto-oligosaccharide, is what's fermented in your intestines. So that's what's producing those substrates or fuel sources for those live, good, friendly bacteria to gobble up, so that we can increase the number of good bacteria and displace the number of bad bacteria. So really my best advice here is to make sure when you're eating bananas is to catch them when they turn ripe, or first turn yellow. And you know, as with everybody, everyone responds differently to carbohydrates, but I always recommend, if it's a really large banana, maybe just try cutting it in half, and test your blood sugars just to kind of see how you handle things like that, because, you know, like I said, everyone's a little bit different. But all these foods here, from garlic to onions, maybe you love eating asparagus. I hope you enjoy eating beans like pinto beans or black beans, lentils, because those are a big food, you know, source here in the Southeast, but also whole grain foods. So not just whole wheat, but in general, all whole grain choices are great sources of prebiotics for those good bacteria. So now kind of looking at probiotic foods. These aren't always, you know, on people's favorite lists. So I'm going to try to make this a little easier and give you some good ideas on how you can do this. But I'm sure everyone's used apple cider vinegar before, but you might not be using the right type. So what you want to look for is a brand called Bragg's, B-R-A-G-G-S, and look for the one that says with the mother. With the mother means that it has these proteins and enzymes in there that ferment. So the fermentation, remember, is what creates those bacteria, and so that's a good thing. So this is a really easy way to maybe add some probiotics to your diet through food, such as maybe making a very simple salad dressing with the apple cider vinegar and some olive oil, and then zesting it up with maybe some lemon juice and pepper or garlic or fresh herbs that you enjoy. And some people like to drink it as well. That's fine too. One of the more palatable ways to do it is to maybe mix it with a little juice, a little water, add a little honey, a little lemon to it. And that's another really fantastic way to add some of these live bacteria to your gut. And then we talk about fermented dairy. I think this is something most people would be familiar with, yogurt. But a couple of things to keep in mind here with yogurt. The FDA requires all yogurt makers to at least have 2 types of cultures in their yogurt if the yogurt has live active cultures. And you would be surprised just how many yogurts are on the shelves of grocery stores that don't have any live active cultures. So that's first thing. Make sure when you are buying a yogurt that you do see the tag on there somewhere saying with live active cultures. And 2 types of bacteria are what's required, but there are different yogurt companies that go above and beyond that. And you may not be used to doing this from a nutrition perspective, but when you check your ingredient list, check to see how many forms of bacteria or cultures you see there. And actually, this is, you know, the more of them you have, this is actually much better for you. So some brands that do that, if you've ever heard of Chobani or Fage, F-A-G-E, those are great brands to look for in the grocery store. But last thing I want to talk about with yogurt is, if, like you said, I said before, if you're buying that flavored yogurt that you think has fruit in there, there's really not close to even a quarter of a fruit in those yogurts. What they're putting in there is the flavor of that. So let's say it was blueberry, it would be blueberry flavoring along with a lot of added sugar. So these are yogurts that actually won't help your gut health. They'll actually worsen your gut health, because remember, sugar is what feeds those bad bacteria. So that's not what we're looking for here. So try to get your yogurt plain. I know that's, you know, tough to kind of get used to, but here's what I would say to make it taste like that stuff you're used to eating is to put real fruit in there. So what is your favorite? Is it blueberries? Is it strawberries? Is it peaches? Is it that banana? Remember, bananas and berries are great prebiotic fruits, and if we combine those with a probiotic food, we get a lot more health benefits from consuming the both of them together. And then if you need to, put a little vanilla extract in there. That helps a lot. And even sweet spices like cinnamon, pumpkin pie spice, apple pie spice work really great. And if you want to, you can add a little bit of honey in there. I would recommend raw honey. Raw honey, again, is going to be a great source of these live good bacteria for you. So that also would, a little will go a really long way. And you might be really surprised to notice that that yogurt now tastes a lot like what you used to eat, but it will be far more satisfying, but it also will provide you with a lot of great gut health benefits. Now, still in the fermented dairy, you might not be familiar with kefir. That's K-E-F-I-R. Kefir is yogurt, but it's fermented 8 times longer. So it actually ferments to where we see it have at least 12 different types of bacteria or cultures present. So you get a lot more bang for your buck with kefir than you do yogurt, and a little bit is all you need, about 1 serving, 6 ounces a day. It's more like a yogurt drink. So think of this as like a smoothie. Put it in a cup, grab a straw, sip away on it. And you can find it flavored, but keep your eye on that label for added sugar. If you can, it's better to try to get it plain and then maybe blend in your own fruits here if you have a blender. Now, you either love or you hate fermented vegetables, sauerkraut, kimchi, pickled vegetables. When you buy them, look for them in the fresh produce, or not fresh produce, where the refrigerator case is, because if you're buying these in the jar, the can, they have been pasteurized. So all of the live good bacteria has been killed off, so there's no live sources there. So you want to look for the ones that will say unpasteurized or raw. And keep in mind, if you do cook these at high temperature for too long, you will kill off the bacteria as well. So cook it on a lower temperature, or even just let it come up to room temperature and eat it that way. Now, some people are going to say, but aren't those high in salt? Yeah, they are. But if you pair these up with fresh foods that are minimally processed, so let's say, for example, instead of eating the traditional sauerkraut with sausage or a processed meat, why not pair it with fresh pork roast or like pork tenderloin, and maybe you have a sweet potato that you've baked or roasted, and then you can put about a half a cup or a cup of sauerkraut on your plate and you'll be okay. You can also rinse them, and that will help to remove some extra sodium for you as well. But don't fear that sodium too much, because the health benefits really far outweigh the sodium, and you can control the sodium from all the other foods you're eating in that day so that it balances out. So let's talk about some probiotic drinks. Maybe you've not ever heard of Cabarrus. Maybe you've heard of kombucha. We're going to talk about one on the next slide. It's called kefir water, and the brand is Kavita. I'll get to that in just a second. If you like the taste of beer, Cabarrus may be a really good option for you. It's made with fermented barley or rye. Then there's kombucha. Kombucha is just black tea that's fermented, typically flavored with natural fruit juices. So there will be a little sugar in there, but not a whole lot of added sugar, not like a sweet tea from Chick-fil-A or some of those places you might get it. But again, a lot of great health benefits there for you. So here's that brand of kefir water. So it's called Kavita. Now, what is kefir water? Kefir is a grain that can be fermented, and it makes a sparkling water. So if you like a little bit of bubbly with your water, this is a great option. And again, it comes flavored, so pick something that you think is going to work well for you. I really like the ginger one, just saying. And then we talk about dairy, the grass milk fed cheeses that you see here from Organic Valley. That's a brand available in most of our grocery stores, and even raw buttermilk is a great source of live bacteria. Now remember, with buttermilk, there's no butter in that, so don't worry about it. You can get that in regular or fat-free, but it also is a really good marinade for meats. So don't discount the buttermilk. It's actually very healthy for you. So you can get these unpasteurized or raw if you're looking for another alternative to getting some of your probiotics. So hopefully between what we've just talked about, there is something here that you might like, that you could give a try. at least get the one serving of something from a probiotic food group. You probably are going to have it easier from the prebiotic foods, so really maybe you can bring it up more with prebiotic foods, and that would be a great start. Let's talk a little bit about fiber, because without fiber, this would not be a complete talk. We know fiber is really important for gut health in the sense of digestive health, but also to help lower our blood pressure, our cholesterol, and help control blood sugars. The more fiber your food has, the slower it's digested, the less of the sugar that's there that raises your blood sugar. So it does it more slowly than if you're eating foods that are low in fiber or what we call refined carbohydrates. So how can you know how much fiber you're getting? It's just to check your food label. So I recommend here, at least when you see a food label, and I'm going to switch to this slide here so you can see a food label, and you see the red arrow pointing to what we call dietary fiber. So that's, if you've never read the nutrition facts, that's where it's at. If you have, then you know where it is. But the number here should be more than 2. So the higher, the better. Just like if we have more bacteria in our ingredients on a food, the better it is for us. If it's under 2 grams, I would discourage it, because then we know it's highly refined. So here's an example. Don't hate me, but grits. Grits are very refined. They're not good sources of fiber. They're not going to help you lower your blood sugars. They're not going to help you lower your cholesterol. They're not going to help you with weight management, because they'll be digested quickly and you'll feel hungry faster. And you can also look at the percent daily value. For fiber, in this example, I think it's saying 18%. It's hard for me to see that, so I apologize. But if it's 10% or more, that means it's a good source. If it's 20% or more, that means it's high in that particular nutrient. So here in this example, it's considered to be a good source of fiber. So those are 2 ways to kind of check your food labels to see if you're getting foods that will give you good sources of fiber. And then off to the right there, you see a little chart for recommended fiber intake based on gender and age, so you can find where you are and where it intersects to know how many grams of fiber a day to shoot for to get some of those health benefits we just talked about. Okay, so we're coming to the end here. So I have put together a sample menu combining prebiotic and probiotic foods. So again, if you're new to this, I wouldn't recommend doing all of this at one time. I would kind of give yourself a few days in between before you add in another pre or probiotic food. But here's just an idea of how you do that and how you can be eating. And then if you want to dive into some more information, and these books provide menus and recipes to make your own fermented vegetables, your own sauerkraut, so you can control some of those ingredients. And also just to get more information about what I've already been talking about. How does having an unhealthy gut maybe contribute to my heart disease or my asthma or my body weight? These are great ones to go with, written for consumers, not just for health professionals. So, all right, well, we've come to the end. I hope that you've enjoyed today's education and know a little bit more about how to take better care of your gut health. So